Hello and welcome to NTD Canada News Election Special Series. I'm your host, Gary Bai. The leaders of the five major parties took part in a largely flat second French debate in Gatineau just across the river from Parliament Hill on Wednesday. Last night's leaders' debate was the only time Canada's foreign policy is supposed to be debated. Foreign affairs was, however, referred to very briefly, and there is hardly any meaningful debate on this issue among leaders. Though not in last night's French debate, housing has become a hot topic in the campaign. Every major party has offered proposals for dealing with what has become a nationwide affordability crisis. On September 22nd, a COVID-19 vaccination passport will be required for access to non-essential indoor services in Ontario. This includes restaurants, bars, event spaces, theaters, and other non-essential indoor settings. Justin Trudeau, Erin O'Toole, Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet, Jagmeet Singh, and Annamie Paul of the Green Party took part in a largely flat second French debate in Gatineau just across the river from Parliament Hill on Wednesday. The topics discussed were the cost of living and public finances, Indigenous people and cultural identity, climate change, justice and foreign policy, and healthcare and the COVID-19 pandemic. The first question of the night, whether any of the leaders would commit to not calling another snap election if they won a minority government, saw all of the leaders commit to a full mandate except for Trudeau, who did not directly answer the question.
Now, Mr. O'Toole, again, the question is, if you were elected at the head of a minority government, would you commit to not calling a snap election before 4 years?
Yes, absolutely. We need to work together to fight the pandemic.
I would like to clearly state that we did not want this election. We want to work together.
The leaders also sparred over vaccines.
But in the middle of a pandemic, this isn't the time to be dividing people. We need to work together. We need to work together at every level of government. We need to use all the tools we have: vaccines, daily rapid testing, masks, physical distancing. But in the middle of a pandemic, why did Mr. Trudeau call an election? We need to work to fight the fourth wave, not on having an election.
Mr. O'Toole is saying that vaccination and testing is the same thing, but it's not at all the same thing. Why have an election during a pandemic? And that's precisely because Canadians need to have a say in how we get out of this.
This week's two debates are the only ones organized by the Leaders' Debates Commission. Four of the party leaders, except the Green Party leader, also took part in a French-language debate last week organized by the French television network TVA. The same leaders will meet again Thursday night in Gatineau for the final and only English-language debate in this election. Last night's leaders' debate was the only time Canada's foreign policy is supposed to be debated. Foreign affairs was, however, referred to very briefly, and there's hardly any meaningful debate on the issue among leaders. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was asked a brief question regarding his take on China. He criticized Trudeau's inaction on a vote to declare the persecution of Xinjiang Uyghurs a genocide. Another question was pitched to Conservative leader Erin O'Toole. He responded with a rather hardline approach, saying that Canada needs to defend our values and our citizens in the face of an authoritarian regime.
We need to have a more serious approach when it comes to China. Mr. Trudeau has always mishandled this file, particularly when it comes to the genocide. He wasn't there for the vote on the genocide in China. Our allies are opposed to having Huawei in our 5G system. We're the only country in the Five Eyes in favor of Huawei. We need to have a level playing field for international trade, for steel and aluminum. Mr. Obama started that, but Mr. Trudeau was once again too slow.
But we did see sanctions and reprisals. Would there not be even further reprisals?
We need to defend our values and our citizens. And the Magnitsky sanctions are very important. They allow us to act against the Chinese Communist Party.
Thank you.
Charles Burton, Senior Fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute and former counselor at the Canadian Embassy to China, said in a press conference yesterday that it is really regrettable that Canada's upcoming federal election does not have more focus on issues of foreign policy, including in the official leaders' debates. According to a National Post article, this election, quote, began with a pretty serious foreign policy issue that, on virtually all measures, Canada screwed up pretty badly. Nevertheless, even in the wake of the Afghanistan refugee crisis, the campaign has strenuously refused to discuss almost anything that occurred outside of Canada's borders. The Post quoted political scientist Andrew Richer, who noted that this level of provincialism is kind of a new thing for Canada. For much of the post-Second World War era, this country's foreign and defense policy was a frequent topic of discussion, and occasionally even became the central issue in election campaigns, he writes. Canada's presence in the world has become largely invisible, and most Canadians don't seem to care. The failure to discuss foreign policy during the elections is something depressing about this country, said the National Post article. Though not in last night's French debate, housing has become a hot topic in the campaign, and every major party has offered proposals for dealing with what has become a nationwide affordability crisis. All of them have made ambitious promises to increase supply to fill in the housing shortage. The Conservatives have pledged to build 1 million houses in the next 3 years. The Liberals have promoted their idea of build, preserve, or repair 1.4 million houses in 4 years. And the NDP has committed to building 500,000 affordable houses in 10 years. Part of the challenge in fixing Canada's housing problem is understanding that housing is a local issue. Paul Taylor, President and CEO of Mortgage Professionals Canada, considers the political party's targets within reach. With the current average of 200,000 housing completions every year, the 1 million residences targeted by the Conservatives will add an extra 400,000 units in the next 3 years on top of the current building rate. Christopher Alexandra, Senior Vice President at RE/MAX Canada, anticipates the political leader's targets could be achieved. He says it's because the federal government does not have jurisdiction in the matter of housing supply. Provinces and municipalities are the actual plan makers. In a recent Scotiabank market research study, Senior Vice President Jean-François Poirot figured one major challenge lies in increasing housing density within city limits, since it is of no interest to existing homeowners. By surveying several Scotiabank real estate clients, they realized the slow planning and approval processes is one important factor that is also hindering housing supply growth. Since housing planning and construction are governed at provincial and municipal levels, Paul Taylor expects the federal government will use incentives and deterrents to push local governments to deliver. Scotiabank's report specifically suggests linking the Federal Transit Fund to housing density and approval speed to help provincial and municipal governments overcome key barriers. Mike Moffat, Senior Director of Policy and Innovation at the Smart Prosperity Institute, praised the proposals made by Conservatives and Liberals in leveraging federal funds to help municipalities modernize their zoning rules and approval processes. Increasing housing supply is not the only solution for Canada's housing crisis. The political parties have proposed promises to restrict housing purchase by foreign buyers. Sotheby's International Realty Canada, in its report released on March 30th, forecasted the resurgence of foreign purchases of high-end properties in the upcoming seasons. The Liberals, the Conservatives, and the NDP and the Green Party have all made promises to prevent foreign purchases from pushing up housing prices. If the parties really want to fix the affordable housing problem, they will have to do more to work with provincial and municipal governments. Only then can the problem be truly resolved. On September 22nd, a COVID-19 vaccination passport will be required for access to non-essential indoor services in Ontario. This includes restaurants, bars, event spaces, theaters, and other non-essential indoor settings. This initiative has raised many protests and divisions in other countries where it has already been implemented, like France, Australia, and the UK. And now we're also seeing it in Canada. So it remains to be seen whether all business owners will enforce this rule. For example, Ottawa gym owner Joshua Fry anticipated in interviews with different media that he will refuse to check the vaccination status of his customers once the province's mandate takes effect. In an interview with CTV News, he remarked that he takes the safety of his customers very seriously and he does everything he can to minimize risks. But he also added, quote, "I have to draw a line when it comes to segregation," referring to dividing the vaccinated from the unvaccinated. He wanted to make it clear to the audience that he is not a so-called anti-vax or a pandemic denier, but he considers himself pro-choice and pro-informed consent, and that people's health information should remain private. He wants to give everyone fair and equal treatment and not refuse entry to anyone based on personal choices. Fry told the Ottawa Citizen that he notified more than 5,000 people on his business's mailing list about his stance. He only received 20 responses, of which only a few were strongly negative. After this, 3 of his 151 members quit, but by the same token, the gym gained 3 new members, he also added. But what are the possible consequences if any business owner adopts Joshua Fry's stance? Individuals could be fined up to $750 and corporations fined $1,000 and up, depending on the offense. But initially, it's expected bylaw officers and provincial inspectors who enforce this mandate will start with education and warnings. Roger Chapman, the City of Ottawa's Director of Bylaw and Regulatory Services, said the City of Ottawa remains committed to helping reduce the spread of COVID-19 and to ensure the health and safety of our community. Once received, we will be reviewing the provincial government's legislation as it pertains to the new vaccine regulations and will develop operational measures and policies to ensure compliance. Implementing Ontario's public health directives is the city's top priority, Chapman said. Fry knows he can face repercussions, but as he proudly said to CTV News, he owns an obstacle gym and he is used to obstacles, so he is ready to overcome these. With that said, thank you for watching NTD Canada News. If you like this video, please give us a like and share. It will help more people see our channel. We'll be back with more comprehensive election coverage, and we'll see you next time.